if you spend enough time in the provinces and talking to different cooks, you'll find that we actually have a lot of vegetable-heavy dishes. And no region better represents that than Ilocos Norte. The food in Ilocos Norte has so much texture, so many vegetables, and can actually be extremely healthy and good for you. Today I'm going to show you how to make one of my favorite dishes from the region. It's called Dinengdeng, or an Inabraw, which is kind of like a vegetable stew with some fried fish or grilled fish, and it's absolutely delicious. This is a perfect little recipe because it fits perfectly with our January theme for our content, which was all about starting the year right and eating healthy. And it also launches, this video launches kind of like the series of videos which we will show you over the next few weeks, all about the region of Ilocos Norte. But to start us off, I want to show you a dish that my mother-in-law actually cooks a lot, and so I've seen her make it a few times. So this is kind of like a very classic Filipino dish. I've seen versions where they will gisa, or fried things like the tomatoes and the onions and the ginger before using it, but I've also seen it done more traditionally where it's really just kind of like boiled all together. So in the spirit of that, I'm going to be using palayok. This is a cooking vessel, a traditional cooking vessel in the Philippines, which you usually line with lard before you start using it. So we're gonna cook everything in that one pot, but before that, we need to fry our fish. We're using beautiful tilapia here. I've seen this dish made with lots of different type of fish, so whatever you have available, I think is fair game. You can also use some bangos and stuff. We've made some slits here just so that it cooks faster. We're gonna dredge that with just some cornstarch. Heat up a pan. We're gonna put a generous amount of oil here because we want that fish to be nice and crispy. Next, we can actually start prepping all our vegetables. First thing we're gonna do is cut up our ampalaya, or bitter gourd. Really important here is just to core it, so you wanna remove all the inner seeds, but you're also gonna try to remove as much of that white pith as possible. So just scrape everything down. Then we have our okra. Remove the top and then just cut that into slanted pieces, just as so. String beans. Don't worry too much about the size of the pieces, as we will be adding all of these at different times during the cook. Some squash. So if you can find them, you can also use squash flowers. They're very traditionally used in Ilocano cuisine. They're just not as easy to get here in Manila all the time. Tomatoes. Red onion, ginger, and finally some eggplant. Let's turn this out when you have kind of like a nice char to it and some nice color. First thing we want to do is bring our water to a boil, and then to that we're going to add already our aromatics: ginger, onions, and tomatoes. Nice and crispy, beautiful color. Keep that juice in there. Another extremely important part of this dish are all kind of like the dahons. One of the most key ones is our saluyot. We have some malunggay, some alugbati, kamote tops. You can also use some sayote tops if you want. It just also shows their penchant for, they like slimy textures, and they're okay with really bitter flavors. A lot of their food has kind of like this inherent bitterness, which I actually really enjoy, and that's why you'll have things like ampalaya in there, okra with the sliminess. And so I've had friends kind of go to these regions or eat that food and be like, oh, it's extremely bitter, but that's how it's supposed to be. One of the videos that you'll see that we will post soon, I go to a carinderia called Dawangs, which is really famous in Loag, and they served me the bile of the cow, which is a whole thing. And that, I tried it raw with some raw beef, like as a dip, and that was just so bitter, and it's a flavor that they really appreciate. To prep this, really up to you in terms of preferences. You can keep kind of like those thicker stalks if you want, or you can kind of pick out the herbs and leaves as needed. I like to do a mix of both. If it's a thinner stalk, I'll probably add it. If it's a nice, thick, girthy stalk, then maybe I won't add it. It's a terrible word. We should just remove that one from the vocabulary. Time to build that broth. So the tomatoes, the onions, and the ginger has been boiling there for about 10 minutes now. We're adding some hibe or some dried shrimp. And now we're gonna add our whole fish. That goes inside and it's just gonna give us so much flavor. The sodium component, or the saltiness and flavoring and seasoning, actually comes from bagoong balayan, which is a fish bagoong, which honestly has never been my favorite. It's a hard flavor for me. It has some funkiness to it, but actually this one's actually really good. It's nice and clean. So we're gonna add a couple tablespoons in here. We're gonna close that up and simmer for about 5 minutes. So your fish probably gave this broth so much flavor. We're gonna go ahead and fish this out. Now we're gonna start adding all our vegetables. So squash first for me, ampalaya. I'm gonna simmer that for 5 minutes before adding my eggplant. Now we're gonna go ahead and add our eggplant. Give that 5 minutes before we go in with the string beans and the okra. So now that we're waiting for things to cook and kind of like develop flavor, I'll just tell you really quickly about the Ilocos Norte series that we have. The first one being about gamut, or a dried seaweed that is extremely dangerous to kind of harvest. And we followed this fisherman in the north of Ilocos Norte. We also did a feature on what I'm gonna call sand salt. I don't know what the technique exactly is called, but basically the salt is filtered out of the sand. I did a huge eating tour, everything from papaitan to the cow bile to lauya. I've tried kind of like all the broad stroke Ilocano dishes, which were absolutely amazing. So we have a huge food tour about that. And then we also did a story about kind of like tapui and fermentation, going all the way up to Adams, where they're very known for making bugnay wine. So there's lots coming up, and I really hope you stick around to see all those videos. Last step, our dahons. Start with the saluyot, alugbati, kamote tops, and our malunggay. This smells to me intoxicating and just looks so beautiful and colorful and healthy. That broth for me is everything. Like, there is a little bit of bitterness there because of the ampalaya, but honestly, it doesn't bother me at all. I actually really like that. You can always add some more fish bagoong if you want in there, but I think I added the right amount. That served with a bowl of rice, and we're gonna add the fish back on. Now that everything's ready, I'm gonna make my little plate. A bit of beautifully cooked white rice. I'm the type of person that puts rice in my soup. I just prefer it that way. But here, you can fish out as much liquid as you want or as much veg as you want and kind of just plate it. You get so much flavor from the fish bagoong. The vegetables all give you kind of like some subtlety as well. And it's not oily, it's not brown. It feels very complete, it feels very nutritious. Definitely something you should start making at home if you haven't. And if you are from Ilocos Norte, or if you're Ilocano, this is a dish that you guys, I think, should be really proud of. Thanks for watching that recipe, guys. Lots of videos coming up, as I mentioned, on Ilocos Norte, so make sure to catch all of that. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're not. Follow us on Instagram at FEATR Media. We'll be posting updates as well there, as well as running shorts of other Ilocano recipes that we love to make. See you guys on the next video.